Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tech Tuesday. I didn't talk to Jada about doing this or not, but I'm going to tease this by saying that this is, I think, the next to last Tech Tuesday. Now, we're not going away. We have something cool and better coming in a couple of weeks. We'll be talking about that very, very soon. Jada's not even paying any attention to what I'm saying because she's trying to fix something in the background. My guest today is Joe Cuticelli with Restaura. Amazing dining services company in the senior living. We've been friends for many, many years. We're going to be talking about technology and dining services. And at first blush, that almost seems counterintuitive or something. So we're going to get into it right after this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Joe, welcome. It's been too long, honestly.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Let's talk about what you're doing, what you're working on in Restaura, and sort of as a background, and then we'll get into the technology piece.
Well, thanks, Steve. It's hard to believe. October will be 2 years since we launched Restaura. As you indicated at the beginning, Restaura is a dining services company that specifically does business in the senior living environment. And we serve senior living and active adult communities. I'm actually today sitting in a hotel room because the last 2 days have been visiting Blue Skies of Texas, which is one of our partners, and I had the opportunity to just be there with our employees and our client and just, really love, being in the field. But, Restaura was really founded by Richard Schenkel and myself, two, I think, veterans of the industry. I've been doing this a long time, but I really felt like there was an opportunity to create something absolutely new in the marketplace. And then we'll talk a little bit about how technology is part of that, Steve. But, that's a little bit about, where we are, and yet just about 2 years old.
Okay, so I got to start with the obvious question. Why did we need another dining services company in senior living?
I'm going to be honest with you. Having spent 25 years in this industry, one of the things I feel like that happened is the relationship between the provider and those that we serve, Steve, had become a commodity, right? And it was really difficult to find value when you're working for sometimes larger companies that are, focused on revenue and focused on that type of growth. Not that obviously we're also, in the business of doing business, but our focus as founders is really about what do we deliver at the end of the day to the end user. And that's those, I always say we're a B2B 4C company. And we really felt like that commoditized relationship was not working anymore. And as we began to look at the space, we said there was a real opportunity to provide what I believe is intrinsic value to a consumer that's absolutely changing. I can see that even as I visit communities today, right? And there's the needs are changing, the way that they want to be served, the requirement of hospitality and so how do we help those that we serve even be more competitive in the marketplace by serving the absolute best, freshest food, the really, unapologetically delicious food is what we've coined that phrase, Steve. Really in an environment, a hospitality environment where we, provide extraordinary hospitality. And then the other thing that's unique, Steve, is every employee in our company, down to the hourly employee, is an owner. So I had the opportunity yesterday when I visited Blue Skies, and I posted on my LinkedIn to spend time with the employee owners and to recognize, their achievements and the things that they're doing. And so we want there to be value through the whole employment chain. And so it's a really exciting differentiator because no other company in the industry has that type of ownership model.
Well, yeah, I love the ownership model. I'm actually working on an article right now where I want to talk about what it means to have an employee or people first organization, right? And there's no company out there that maybe there are one or two, but not many. But mostly there are a bunch of people out there who say, nobody says, we hate our employees, we hate our customers, but the behavior is there.
Right.
And so you guys are really living it. You're putting dollars behind it. I know we talked about this a long time ago, but let's just hit briefly what you're doing on this employee owned thing.
So it's interesting. The Seabrook and Hilton Head, which was our first client, it was the first place that we adopted this ownership program. Richard, this was something fundamentally important to Richard from day one, right? He had owned a different company. He had gone through an exit, and he looked back and said, how do I, if I were to do something all over again, what would I do differently? And really, how do we create an environment where everybody is an owner? We actually refer to our employees as owners, and it's important because how do we give them sort of that tangible thing that helps them feel more vested in what they're doing, right? And they feel like they're empowered through ownership. And we're doing a lot of work around what does that mean around culture. We spend a lot of time organizationally as culture every single day in the corporate office. And then this gets, we have people join from all over the country. We have a daily spark where we talk about different cultural things that we're working on collectively as an organization. Richard and I participate even in those on a daily basis. We do that on site every single day. We talk to our employees about what it means to be owners, right? There's a great book that talks about being obsessed with the front line. And I think, we learn more from the front line. I say this all the time. Every time I visit a community, I learn something from our employee owners. They tell me what's working. I literally sat with two of them today and talked about what's working, what's not. And I promised them that I would take that back to corporate and we'd make changes based on their advice, right? And they're so appreciative and thankful for that. Steve, I just want to say one thing about the Seabrook. We have an employee there. And when I got to meet him a couple of weeks ago when I was visiting the Seabrook, he asked me, he said, "Hey, listen, what's my ownership worth today?" And I assured him it's worth a lot more than it was a year and a half ago when we started. And so that for them to even be thinking that way tells me that the culture is working, right? They see themselves as a vested partner in the business and they want to deliver because they know that delivery has value.
Yeah, and this is so important, right? I mean, too often employees just come to work. Oftentimes they look, even in senior living, and they see, in some cases, executive directors, in other cases, C-suites that are making massive amounts of money. They're struggling day to day, and they feel like, is it really worth it? Right. And what you're really saying is yes, and that when you contribute, when you make a real difference in the organization, with our residents and your fellow team members, it's worth it. You're going to get a payoff, and it's really, really amazing. So,
Steve, I'll just say one more thing on this topic. It's yesterday. It also takes hierarchy out of the equation, right? And so as I go visit, people feel like, oh well, the CEO of the business or co-founder is here, and I remind them that we're all owners, right? And a young lady yesterday who we recognized for being the owner of the month, shared that with me. She really felt like she was shaking the hand of an equal, not as somebody that she's subordinate to. And I think that that's so important because that's encourages them to deliver at the highest level that they can and provide that hospitality experience that's going to be better than anything else anywhere else, right? And so that's really one of the real unique differentiators, I think, for us as a company across the whole Phoenix3 collective, Steve.
Before we get to the technology, I actually have one more question for you. Sure. Relative to this employee ownership thing. What difference does it make to A, the residents, and B, to the owners of of the communities that you are that you're serving?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've never had a potential partner of ours tell me that they weren't excited about the ownership program. One of our newest clients is Brandon Mill Woods, Charmaine. I don't know if you know Charmaine, but one of the things that excited her most was the opportunity for her employees to become owners of Restaura. I mean, she's been great about sharing about the transition. It's just happened over the last couple of weeks. They're very, very new for us. So I've never heard a client say to me they weren't excited for their employees to be able to be connected to something. And so that's number one. And from the employee side, listen, you can imagine there are people who have worked 20 years in a company, Steve, and when they leave, they have what they've contributed to a 401k plan or what they've, what's been contributed on their behalf to the pension. But they don't have anything tangible for what they built, right? And I saw that in a former organization of which I served. Ownership was shared and stock at the highest levels of the organization, but not on the not with the people who were working at it every day. And so our hope someday is as we continue to grow and as we grow our profits, that we'll be able to distribute those to those who are working really hard in the field, and it will matter. And I'll tell you just one more story. when I first shared this about ownership with our employees at the Seabrook, I was telling the story about technology, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but I was sharing that I have a Tesla and I can't believe that I'm in a car that drives itself, right? And I take for granted that I'm able to have a Tesla, Steve, or I'm able to have some of the things that I have. And we were just talking about the whole thing. Did you ever think there would be a self-driving car? At the end of that conversation, this woman came up to me and she said, I have to ask you a question. She said, with my ownership, someday will I be able to own a Tesla, right? Steve, that's what really matters at the end of the day, right? And I remember my answer to her was, I hope so, right?
Yeah.
Because it could be really meaningful to the end deliverer of our services, which is the hourly employees, which to me is the most exciting and motivating thing that we're doing.
Yeah. And I remember seeing a video, it's been 2 or 3 years ago, about, I think it was a garage door company that used this similar ownership model.
Works. That's it.
Right. Yep. Where, you know, the frontline employees were walking away with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Obviously, no guarantee that that's going to happen every time, but it's really, really inspiring to think about it. So the other question I have to ask, so you've gone into this community, your dining services people are all getting that. The rest of the people aren't. Are they jealous? What about?
No, we haven't heard. I don't think they figured it out yet, but we haven't heard that there's there's that conflict yet.
Yeah. I was wondering about that as you were talking. Okay, let's get to technology. First off, I mean, I get technology in dining services. It's kind of been around. You have point of sale technology. You've got software used for ordering food and supplies. But what else?
No, it's interesting.
What am I missing?
I think technology should touch every single part of the food and dining operation, right? And we often think about this. You'd be shocked when I tell you that I go into locations where they're still taking manual refrigerator and food temperatures, that are required by the regulation, right, to have, right? And think about when you're doing it manually, Steve, think about everything that comes into play where, that could create a problem because there's human error in there, right?
Yep.
So when we talk about simple things, number one, I want to share that the technology that we use today is never meant to replace people, right? It's meant to have them spend more time in the places that matter, serving the customer, right? Early on from day one, Richard and I said, technology needs to drive every single thing that we do organizationally, right? Where we can provide automation needs to happen. When we look at technology, two of the most exciting things that we're doing is, one is we're measuring sentiment in real time, okay? So when we think about the former model where, twice a year, they might have a survey that goes out to the customer. And, I would ask, to people, how are we doing, right? And it's always sort of a gut check, right? Well, I think you're doing okay because I go through the dining room and I'm not getting a lot of complaints, or we get comment cards right? So, or we do our annual survey and at that moment in time, because we served lobster the day before, we're doing great, right?
Yeah.
Versus sentiment is something that we're measuring on a daily basis, right? And so the technology is really tracking what's working, what isn't. That information is very powerful, Steve, because you can imagine when you have that type of information, you can make changes in real time. Think about that customer experience. Something didn't work one night, a meal didn't work, and all of a sudden we see that we're getting some feedback, not necessarily negative. It could be good constructive feedback, but we can make a change in real time now. We don't have to wait for a survey to come out in 6 months. The benefit to the community is when a prospective resident comes in and says, how is your food service, right? The community can tell them because they have measurement in real time. They can say, well, this is how we're trending over the last 30 days. This is how we've been trending year. This is the benchmark we've set for ourselves. And so that's the kind of thing that we're working on. By the way, I don't believe that exists anywhere else other than the technology that we've built, proprietary technology that Restaura has built. So that's one huge change, because for me as an operator, even earlier in my career, I would touch every single table every single night, but really understanding how do you measure true satisfaction, Steve? As you know, when you're eating someplace 365 days a year, there's going to be challenges, but you want that feedback. And so we have multiple ways. We have a scientific approach to how we're getting sentiment. We're pushing notifications out to residents. We're allowing them to to use different survey tools to get us. We even use sometimes that happy or not thing. We weight each of those against a Likert scale, and we're getting sentiment in real time. And it's really important because now we can really measure the effectiveness of our program in a particular community. So to me, that's one piece of technology that's very, very exciting.
Right. So I've got a comment here. Jade, if you can put that up for me, it's sort of long, so I'm going to just sort of summarize it. The question really is that, so, you've got mostly people sort of eat the same thing, have the same needs, but in a senior living community in particular, as people get older, they have all kinds of specialized needs. Some of them are preferences, like me, I'm a vegetarian. Others are going to be things that are just, things that they can't eat anymore, or they need it prepared special way. Does technology help with that?
Yeah. First of all, hi, Sandy. It's great to hear from you. So here's what I'll say. Beyond the sentiment, I think the most exciting part of where technology is going is the ability for residents to really have a say in everything that they want and do. So I really believe that personalized dining through technology is here today. One of the things that we're doing is we go through an intake process where a resident will tell us their likes, dislikes. They can tell us a texture issue that they have. They can give us allergies. They can all of that sort of information, right? And so therefore that gets preloaded into the system, right? And we'll have the ability through that system to know, even at table side, what to recommend to them. I'll give you an example, Steve, that when we built this technology, as somebody who travels a lot, imagine is if you were traveling and you had an app where you put your likes and your dislikes in, okay? Everything where you want to eat, type of food, what excites you, what doesn't excite you. And you get to a city and all of a sudden this app pops up and tells you should go to this restaurant because it has all of those things, right? That's the type of technology. So the residents have that type of access. We're going to get to a place in a couple of months where we will push to a resident on a Monday the menu, which have all recommendations of what they might want to think about eating this week based on their likes and their dislikes. And that will continue to grow because when they have a meal, we want them to rate that meal. Now we can ask them tableside, and through predictive analytics, it's going to get smarter and smarter, where we're going to be able to help them choose in advance and take some of the process of decision for them, especially when they have specific dietary needs or restrictions that Sandy just highlighted, right? And so I think that's the most exciting part. It's interesting because obviously we're using some AI and, again, predictive analytics to do that. It does not replace the human element, right? Because you still need that person who's interacting with the resident, who's asking the question, how was it? In some cases, we're even taking pictures. Did they finish their plate? Didn't they? What did you like about it? Didn't? So we have to feed the system manually still, right? Because the information is only as good as it can be. But you can imagine where this can go, Steve, in the future.
Yeah, I think I always imagine that one of the biggest challenges for any chef is they get a new recipe and they go, oh man, that is the greatest thing in the world. People are going to love it. And then they put it out there and it bombs.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the other thing happens as well, where they do something thinking, oh man, we're doing the same old thing. How many times can we really serve Rice Krispies, right? And yet everybody still wants to eat Rice Krispies for breakfast. So I would think the technology could really help you refine that to serve people better.
Yeah, it's interesting because we are now a great example of that. Just today, I was talking to some of one of our chefs, and he was talking about a recipe that isn't working, right? And it's on the menu, and they're, again, through the system, they're able to see usage. Now, Blue Skies is a large community that has several hundred residents, but when they're tracking this item, it's not selling, right? And it's not selling because people quite honestly don't like it. Well, why are we taking up menu space, right? And so now they're able to make those adjustments in real time, right? And they're able to go in, make that menu change. Our technology allows it to even have the menu spreads all done, and so we can react to those kinds of things in real time. Sometimes even making just simple adjustments to the recipe. Again, we found out yesterday that they were cooking a brisket. The recipe said X. They needed to be cooked longer. They were able to make that adjustment through the technology. I happen to have Ross Stickman, who works for me, had the brisket last night. It, cooked for 6.5 hours. It was amazing, right? But technology is allowing us to make those adjustments in real time, but based on resident feedback, something that doesn't, I think exist today in the way that we've developed it.
Gotcha. So one of the other questions I have is, Joe, my audience tends to be owners, operators. Sure. How does this, and maybe this sounds a little crass, but we're still in a business. How does this help me, this technology, this platform help if I'm the owner, I'm the executive director, I'm doing life enrichment or part of the board of directors?
Yeah. So one is we're able to give back information, Steve, in real time. So you can think about when you're, generally we're always managing a lagging indicator versus a leading indicator, right? Yep. So all of our costs are also fed through the system. All of our labor costs are fed through the system, right? We're able to give trend analysis. We can literally hand an administrator now on a daily basis a playbook to help them run their business and to make, for one, is hold us accountable based on the budget, right? But as things change and things happen, as we all know, there's been a lot of inflation, a lot of food inflation, things that we can't control, labor inflation, right? And, as things happen, I'll give you an example. If there's a bird flu and all of a sudden eggs spike, right? We can see that spike in our system and we can have a conversation with administration about how we want to handle that collectively. Yeah. The technology will literally give them options of things that we might want to change to help stabilize the budget. They can make those decisions in real time because the technology allows them to do it. This is not a technology that we've developed for us as an organization. It's a technology that every client that we have has access to sort of baseline how their business is doing. How do they, how are their, what kind of satisfaction does their residents have? Financially, how are they doing? So, and soon we'll be able to integrate when you talk about we can talk, the point of sale system is loaded in there. So we can see if they're using those other life enrichment services, right? The other amenity services in the community. So while today it's specific and proprietary to what we do at Restaura, and we will maintain it as a proprietary tool for Restaura, we do want to help them integrate everything that they're doing in their community to the system to help them be more effective. It's an aggregator.
Yeah, so I guess that was my question for you is if I'm an operator, I'm a self-op, somebody, and I'm looking at this technology and say, I want that, can I come get it?
No.
Okay.
No, because we're not selling the tech. We're not selling technology because technology alone, again, is not the solution, right? We really believe that, we have an end-to-end solution between our ownership model, our unapologetically delicious food, what we're developing from scratch cooking. One of the things that was most exciting to me, as I went through every refrigerator and every cooler, Steve, I'm still an old school operator. I'm a chef by trade, was to see things being cooked, from scratch, right? Yeah. Soups being made from scratch, sauces being made from scratch. Yesterday, one of the most popular items is every Monday at Blue Skies, they serve a Thanksgiving turkey meal, right? And there's a line to get fresh roasted carved turkey, right? And it's all cooked. The mashed potatoes literally had pieces of potatoes in it, right? It wasn't a fake mashed potato. They made their own stuffing from scratch, and they were taking all of the bones, and they were making stock today from the leftover bones from the turkey, right? So this is an end-to-end solution. Technology alone is not the solution. And while I think it's an unbelievable technology that people can benefit from, we really believe that having it be proprietary to Restaura, the platform it makes us also uniquely different as an organization in the marketplace.
Gotcha. So I got to ask this question bluntly. Does it save money?
It does. It does, because we have a lot more visibility around what we're producing, how we're producing it, when we're producing it. And again, we're controlling waste better. Because this integrates food production as well as, end-to-end solution as it relates to our procurement. Ultimately, it saves money. But what I always say is, I hope that operators see the investment in food as something that's going to benefit them long time. One of the things, Steve, that I think people are recognizing is food used to be seen as a cost center. Now it's being seen as a necessary amenity that's helping position communities differently in the marketplace to be more competitive, right? If you're just focused on food as what is it costing from a dollar standpoint, I think you're missing something, because I think food is going to be a critically important contributor to why people choose communities moving forward. I've seen it happen already.
Well, so I think this is really important, and I like to. We only have a few minutes left, but I actually like to spend a little bit of time talking about the shifts in what consumers are looking for. But to set the stage, on our Friday Foresight TV, I'm going to be talking to Lisa Hawthorne at Willow Valley, and they have residents from I think 45, 46 states in that community. Sure. And I've been there. I've had dinner there, and I know that dining experience is a big part of the draw of why people are coming from all over the country. So, what are you seeing in terms of what consumers are, their expectations? How has that changed?
As I'm talking, first of all, I think the consumer's changing, and I think, again, when we talk about technology, I always tell the story. My father passed away last year, but my mother and father, used technology for everything, and they were in their 80s. My mother still does, right? My mother, by the way, is also driving a Tesla, and it's changed her life, right? And so the consumer expectation is changing because of access, right? They've had such just access to technology, to great food, to the places that they live, and where they're having the independent access, right? Think about Grubhub and all those different ways, or Instacart. And they're interacting, and choice is a huge issue. So why would I want to give that up by moving someplace? And so what I'm hearing from people is, and I heard this from General Jones yesterday, who's the CEO at Blue Skies. Food has to be great, right? Because it's the minimal expectation today, because the consumer is just different, right? Because again, they have so many options, and as people are aging, they're also a lot more mobile. So if not, they're going to get in a car and go drive someplace to get it, right? And so we've got to make sure that what we're serving is so good that they'll stay there on campus, right? Because they have all this infrastructure. They don't want to have that infrastructure not have it be used. And I can tell you that one of the things I heard over the last couple of days, Steve, is that more and more residents are eating on site because the food is better, right? And they're just doing, the team's doing a great job. So I do think the consumer demand is changing. I think it's one of the first questions that I'm hearing when I talk to marketing teams that people are asking them is about the food. I think amenities in general, but I think choice is going to become, a paramount thing. And I will just tell you, I was at a 300-bed continuing care retirement community the other day that had 7 dining venues. 7. Think about
that.
Yeah.
Wow. Are you ever going to get to like a Cheesecake Factory style menu where you have 300 things on every day?
Well, it's challenging from a supply standpoint to do that, right? But I do think what you'll see is a lot more customization, so it never feels stale, and there's a lot more changing of the menu, pop-ups and things like that, so people feel like there's a lot more variety.
Gotcha. So Jeffrey Scott asked this question: what's one misconception about senior living industry that you would like business leaders and families to better understand? I think it's a great question.
Yes, Jeff, good to hear from you as well. It's interesting, Steve. I tried to convince my father for years to move into a senior living community. And my father said he didn't want to live with old people, right? And it's a terrible misconception. As a matter of fact, I tell people that he did me a great injustice, because it would be a great place for him to have left my mother behind, right? When you think about what it provides from continuity of having those friends and people and places. And so I think this misconception that it's where you go to die versus where you go to live. And I think we've got to find a way to help the industry change. And I always say that if I want to go there and live my best life in my final years, but who knows how long, that will be, right? And so, we've got to figure out how to help people live their best lives in senior living and change that misconception.
Yep. No question about it. So, Joe, where do people find you? How do they engage with you?
Yeah, so you certainly can go to my LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest place. Thank you for popping that up there. You can go to Restaura, restaura.com, Phoenix3.com, which is phx3.com. So appreciate people reaching out. I'd love to talk. I'd love to continue the conversation with anyone who would love to have it. And I'd love to just share my knowledge and feedback.
Great. Joe, this has been a great conversation. Appreciate you joining me. Looking forward to seeing you on the road at Leading Age in the fall. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. I hope the audience has a great week. Thank you for all the comments that came in. That makes the show much more dynamic. And with that, we're going to sign off.